Welcome back to IPS Live, the official podcast for Inside Pack Sports. Today we're talking NC State football. Big game for the Wolfpack this weekend over in Durham, taking on the rival Duke Blue Devils. As always, we'd like to get Jordan Mann on here from the Big J Little J show to talk about the Blue Devils. Jordan, how you been doing?
I've been good, man. I'm glad to be back on here. Third time in a row now talking Duke and NC State. Obviously, Duke's had the upper hand the last two times, but coming into this year, this matchup right here, a little uneasy after the last couple of weeks watching some Duke football.
I want to ask you, I'm going to throw you a fastball right away here. I want to talk to you about the transfer portal. I was watching the Duke Tulane game, and look, I think Darian Mensah has been great. I'm interested to get your eval, but just looking at the numbers and what I've seen from him in terms of throwing the ball, he's been as advertised as a passer, right? But when you're in this era of revenue share, NIL, all those different things, and I saw there was a mistake. I don't know if it was an interception or a fumble. I can't remember the exact play against Tulane. But the camera panned to Manny, and he had this frustrated look on his face. And I just was wondering, like, do you ever wonder if those guys are thinking, man, that $3 million this year we could have got 5, 10, 6, 7, 10 different guys, right? What do you think on that?
Look, I think so far he has been worth every penny. Third in the country in passing yards, and yeah, he had some fumbles against Illinois that hurt him, and then he had an interception against Tulane. But he's night and day an upgrade from Malik Murphy last year. I know Duke won 9 games with Malik, but we were bottom of the ACC in every offensive category, whether it was total yards, rushing yards, third down percentage. And so the upgrade at quarterback's been great. Unfortunately, there's been other areas of the team that has been struggling, and that has been the defense on third downs especially, and then the special teams have been awful in all phases 3 games in the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mensah he's honestly exceeded my expectations. And, hell, he was the top quarterback arguably in the transfer portal for the couple of days he was in there, right? Because Duke worked really hard to get that one done. But he's been great. And I want to ask you, I thought it was interesting. He doesn't really run. Like, he's not what you call a dual threat. I mean, his rushing numbers are basically sacks or scrambles, right? So are you surprised he's as quality a passer as he's been through 3 games?
Maybe a little bit, yeah. The way that Duke's offense is set up, like there's quick hitters, and he's hit those a lot. Last year, Malik Murphy missed those, and they called them singles on every broadcast. That Murphy would miss the singles and hit home runs, and you see Mensah hitting the singles, and then they're turning into doubles and triples by the guys getting some yards after catch. With his running, though, that's a fair point. I think he had like a couple hundred yards at Tulane last year, but he's not looking to really run. Now, he will get out of the pocket sometimes a little too quickly, and he will either try and get you like 3 to 4 yards and just go to the next down, but he's not looking to burn you like CJ Bailey does with his legs when he's out in open space.
Yeah, I think when you make an investment like that, if you're Duke, in my opinion, their hope is you're unlocking that passing game, right? You're unlocking the elements of that passing game that can give you the upside to win games. And that's what I think is a scary situation for NC State going into this game, because frankly, Duke's playing well enough to be 3-0. It's been the mistakes. It's been the turnovers. It's been like you mentioned, the special teams issues that have really hurt them. And so once they get into these spots where there's games where those things aren't happening, they're going to be dangerous.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? Like for Duke fans, that's the hope. We have the talent. It's just we're shooting ourselves in the foot with these turnovers and mistakes. And I don't know what the turnover margin is, but I think Duke's like -6 in the turnover margin this year. The only turnover they have forced was at Tulane after Retzlaff scrambled for 20-plus yards, and our defensive end, Vincent Anthony, knocked it out of his hands. So they converted a 3rd and long, but luckily for Duke, they forced their first turnover, and that's just kind of the way the season's been. Like the defense cannot get off the field on 3rd downs, and last year they're so good at forcing turnovers, and this year they just haven't. And some of that's due to Terry Moore not being there because he tore his ACL against Ole Miss in the Gator Bowl.
Yeah, and I'll ask you about Terry in a second. Here's how bad it's been for Duke, everyone, from a turnover margin perspective. They're last in the ACC in turnovers lost with 7. The next highest is Wake at 5. They're also last in total gained with just 1. So to Jordan's point, they're -6 in the turnover margin. That's -2 per game. It's tough when you give up 2 possessions per game. And then you factor in their schedule's been relatively tough, right? Like Illinois, ranked team. Jordan, I know you expected this Tulane game to be difficult with all the backstory with Mensah and all those different things, and that's a quality team with some raw. So it's just been an issue that I think these turnovers have kind of hurt them in those 2 games to where can you cut those out, right? Like you said, that has to be the focal point because I don't know if I can recall a time a team has been last in the ACC in total gained and also first in total lost.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And that's like you look back to last year's matchup with Duke and NC State, and the first play of the game was a safety for Duke. And that was huge because Duke's offense, besides a bomb to Jordan Moore, was really non-existent in Raleigh. And Duke kicked I think you guys kicked 5 field goals and tied it back up to make it 15-15 or whatever it was. And it was just one of those days where the offense couldn't get going because the defense kept Duke in the game and ultimately won the game for Duke. And that just hasn't been the case this year for the defense. There, like 2 really good opponents, number 9 Illinois and Tulane, and they've burned Duke with one taking care of the football and also forcing turnovers against Duke.
I want to talk about the rushing game a little bit here. I felt like coming into the year, this could be a big year for Jaquez Moore, right? I think that was the expectation last year with losing Jordan Waters, and you would think he would take over, but he was injured, wasn't able to really get going. And now, he's leading them in rushing attempts, but man, I was watching Tulane and the Nate Shepherd kid was popping, man, like the freshman running back. He looked really good. He's actually leading them in yards per carry. Well, he's second behind Anderson Castle, but in terms of like recency, it feels like he's coming on.
Yeah, Nate Shepherd, big fan of Nate Shepherd. He is a home run hitter, true freshman, had 5 carries for 75 yards at Tulane. I think he had like 4 catches for however many yards, and he's starting to get more and more snaps. I think he actually had 1 more snap than Jaquez at Tulane, and he's going to be a guy that is going to get more snaps and probably be the leading rusher throughout the year, if I had to guess, because you just can't keep that type of talent off the field. He's from Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans, so it was a big game for him to do it in front of his friends and family. But I think he had over 30 touchdowns his junior year of high school, and LSU came calling his senior year, and then he got hurt. And I think that turned out to be a blessing in disguise for Duke because I don't know if they're going to hold on to a Louisiana kid if LSU comes knocking on the door.
Probably not. Right? Probably not. And no offense to Duke, you would agree with me on that. I would say the same for NC State, right? They're dealing with something similar, I think, with a player from Ohio and Ohio State right now. It's hard for those programs when the home team's Ohio State or LSU. Yeah. So I'm with you there. I wanted to ask you, would you label this a pass-first offense? Like if you were NC State going into this game, are you saying, look, we got to stop the pass in this game?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, Mensah's 3rd in the country in passing yards, and Duke throws quick hitters as a run game type of thing. Kurt Roper used to do that actually at Duke when he was offensive coordinator, was throw quick outs, and if you have 3 receivers on the left side, you throw it out there, and the other 2 block for them, you get 5 or 6 yards. Now 2nd and 4, that's basically like a run. And so you'll see that against NC State, I assume, Saturday. But I would definitely say this is a pass-first offense.
I know Jordan Moore was one of Duke's top receivers last year, maybe their go-to guy. When you look at this receiving game now, feels like it's spread around a little bit. You've got a couple guys, Quashawn Brown, I know, Samir Hagans is obviously a big play weapon as well. But a lot of guys between 9 and 14 catches. Is that a product of Mensah just being a real quarterback? I talk to folks, I think that's what kind of makes even CJ a little dangerous at State is they've got all these different guys, whether it's Jolie, Rogers, etc. But it doesn't matter. They're throwing it and spreading it around to where you don't really have a feature guy. Do you think that's a product of Mensah?
Yeah, I do, actually. I think Mensah, when Duke played Illinois, I think 12 different guys got a reception. And I think that's just Mensah spreading the love around. And he has, like, number 1 target is Cooper Barkate, transfer from Harvard. And he has a unique story because he actually was offered by, like, Oregon in high school, but he wanted to get a Harvard degree. And so he went to Harvard, tore up the Ivy League, was unanimous player of the year in the Ivy League. Now he came over to Duke, and he's been outstanding. And he's been Mensah's go-to guy early on. And Andrew Anthony came in from Oklahoma, who is very explosive. And then you add with Samir Hagans and Queso Brown, Like that wide receiver room is very talented. I know they lost Jordan Moore and Eli Painkel, but I would argue that this receiving room is a bigger upgrade than last year. And you're kind of seeing that with the way the ball is shared with other receivers because they're so good.
How do you feel about Duke's offensive line through 3 games?
Honestly, I like it. I very much way better than last year. Last year, horrible in rushing yards per game, per average, total, you name it. It was bad. And this year we're averaging, I think, like 6 yards a carry, or somewhere around 5 yards a carry. And last year was 3 yards a carry. And it put in perspective, our starting running back last year was Star Thomas, who's now getting reps at Tennessee. And so he had a good game against UGA, but there were, besides the UNC game last year, he was held in check in rushing department. So the offensive line last year struggled with run blocking, but this year it's night and day different. You see that returning 4 out of 5 guys. And Brian Parker is our right tackle, I think he is, and he's projected NFL first-round pick. So he has 1 more year eligibility, but I think he'll be going to the draft after this season.
Yeah, we talked about Parker coming into the year. PFF had him and Jacarius Peak as the top returning graded offensive tackles in the ACC. NC State's left tackle. I don't know if Brian was named preseason All-ACC. There might not have been enough Duke voters down there, Jordan. Even though I voted for Brian because I knew he was the returning guy according to PFF, and I let those guys do the O-lineman. But, yeah, really talented offensive lineman. I want to ask you before we move off the offense, what do you think might concern Duke's offense with NC State going into this matchup?
Honestly, just not finishing drives. Like NC State, like obviously NC State brings a unique standard on new defensive coordinator trying to get some left. So DJ's going to throw something a little bit different than last year. But honestly, it's kind of Duke versus themselves right now with they move the ball so well within the 20s, and then when they get in the red zone, they just stall out. And then when they stall out, there's a 50% chance the kick's not going in. So honestly, it's right now it's Duke against themselves, and they have to convert red zones to touchdowns.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back to discuss Duke's defense in this matchup. We're talking NC State versus Duke Saturday in Durham, and we're going to discuss Duke's defense here. And look, this is a defense that really, when I was looking at the numbers, Jordan, they kind of surprised. I don't know what surprise isn't the right word. They were interesting, right? I saw a tweet. I don't know if you saw this from David Hale, where he talked about the tackles for loss that Duke had this year. I want to see if I can pull that up. But in terms of NC State and Duke, he said that Duke is top 10 nationally in terms of tackles for loss per game. They're actually 9th most in the country. NC State's offense is allowing 8 tackles for loss per game, which is the 7th most in the country. So I was thinking, okay, when you look at Duke's defense, that's impressive. But then I saw they're 15th in rushing yards allowed per game. They've given up 9 rushing touchdowns, which is the most in the ACC. So it feels like it's a little feast or famine in terms of stopping the run. And you've got Hollywood Smothers coming in here who's leading the ACC, averaging 126 yards per game.
It's weird, dude. I replied to that tweet by David Hell, and I said Duke's going to sack NC State on second and 3, and then 3rd and 10. NC State's going to get 17 yards because Duke runs because the softest zone I've ever – like their zone coverage is like a high school varsity basketball team guarding the 2015-2016 Golden State Warriors in a 2-3. We're going to let you shoot these outside shots. Just please, to God, miss it. And it's not been great. And you see why the opposing offenses stay on the field. But to your point about the rushing yards, they're a little deceiving because all of them are the quarterbacks. That's it. It was Elon's QB. Landon King had like 87 rushing yards and a touchdown or 2. And then Retzlaff had 111 yards rushing and 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think it was 4 touchdowns. And so it's the opposing QBs that are killing Duke running the ball. Even Altmaier kept one and ran about 25 yards for Illinois. And so they've held the running backs in check, which is the weirdest thing. Like Illinois has 2 really good running backs. They averaged, I think, 2.5 yards per carry against Duke and only had like 40 total yards. And then Tulane's running backs only had like 50 total rushing yards. But CJ Bailey, I've already told my friends, I've already bet CJ Bailey rushing props over. I have 25 and 50 because it is going to be – Duke has to show me Saturday that they can stop a QB doing a read option pulling because every time the defensive end collapses And a guy like C.J. Bailey, year 2, he's comfortable. He's looked outstanding, not only passing but running. And Duke's going to have to show me that they can stop a running quarterback. And I tried to believe in him against Tulane, and it was like Duke didn't even read a scouting report on Retzlaff's career at BYU.
Yeah, he's a runner, right? I mean, that's it. He's a runner. I'm very familiar with Manny. We talked about this last year. He coached at NC State under Chuck Amato when I started in this, and I got to know Manny when he was at NC State at the time. Great guy, great defensive mind. Look, he hasn't deviated much away from what he learned under Chuck in terms of playing defense, right? Like, you know this, Duke's going to stack the box. They're going to try and reestablish the line of scrimmage, whether that's against a run or against a pass, and they're going to try and create havoc. And I think when you look at that from their perspective, the tackles for loss, it certainly makes sense. I thought it was interesting, though. You mentioned zone coverage. Are they playing more zone now? Because I know he's typically been a man guy, certainly all the way back, like I said, to Chuck. They were almost all man.
Yeah, they ran some zone recently where I think it's just because outside of Chandler Rivers, it's freshmen that are the DBs. And I just don't know if they have the trust in them and lets them just like play in front, like play the guy in front of you. But they play so far off, man. There was a 3rd and 10 at Tulane, and Retzlaff that hike and threw it immediately to the left because it was in front of the line of scrimmage by 2 yards, but there was not a DB in sight for 15 yards. So they got the first down easily, and that's just kind of been their MO recently on 3rd down coverage. They'll send a blitz, but they're playing soft coverage, at least with the inexperienced guys on one side of the field, it looks like. It's not Rivers. It's like Amari Robinson, Landon Callahan. They're freshmen, and so they've been thrown in the fire in the first 3 weeks, and I hope to God that Duke does stop a 3rd down because against Elon and Illinois, both teams converted a 3rd and 20, and that just is not good. One was a 40-yard run by Elon. The other was a 3rd and 21 screen pass that got 25 yards. So that's just kind of been the MO with Duke right now, and that's really holding them back.
Yeah, look, Duke has playmakers, though, on every level. Like, I'm very familiar with Vincent Anthony, one of the top sack guys already in the ACC, returning player from Durham. Our guy over here at Inside Pack Sports, Mr. Rob McLam, Jordan, you may not know this, actually coached VJ Anthony in high school, so he's very familiar with him as well. He's having another big-time year. You've got Chandler Rivers in the secondary cornerback. We know him, returning all-ACC player. That was an easy preseason all-ACC plug-and-play selection. Even the non-Duke guys got that one right, Jordan, right? I mean, he's getting that one. Once you make it, you should get that next vote the next year. But it looks like I'm looking at the PFF grades right now, man. He's been as advertised. I mean, he's been really good as well. Who are some of the other guys outside of those two to keep an eye on this weekend?
Yeah, Nick Morris Jr. has been the very solid linebacker for Duke. He had a great game against Illinois. He had a pretty good game against Tulane, and that's one position that I've been worried about for this season. If you look back even to Elko's tenure last year and Elko's tenure, Duke's always brought in a transfer linebacker, and this was the first offseason they did not. And you kind of see it a little bit. They're young on the 2 deep, and it's Nick Morris Jr. and Trey Freeman are the starters, but Nick Morris Jr. is the guy that has been very solid for Duke at the linebacker position. So that's another guy that I'd look out for. And obviously Wes Williams, who's on the other side of the defensive line with Vincent Anthony's run out, has been a freak. He had three and a half sacks or whatever it was against Illinois. And Wes Williams played better against Tulane. And Wes was the guy that got the safety at NC State. So maybe he has a big game in Durham against NC State.
Yeah, you got to deal with those guys up front. You mentioned Rivers in the secondary. Do you feel like teams are throwing away from him?
I do. And I mean, rightfully so, right? Like if it's either go against an All-American type of DB or to the right side, there's a freshman. So it's like that's just kind of the MO that it's been. But yeah, they've been definitely throwing away from Rivers.
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers now. Through 3 games, he's had 5 targets his way. 3. So in 3 total games, everyone, he's only been thrown out 5 times. Teams are 3 for 44. Okay, but he's also got 2 pass breakups. The other 2, they were actual pass breakups on the play. So look, he's one of the best out there. I don't know. We'll do on our film breakdown when we get into the game with the guys. We'll look at if he's playing size or who he might match up on. But this could be a deal where you're gonna see NC State look to test those other corners and their safeties as well. How's the safeties held up? I know you mentioned Terry Moore. I assume he's not back this week.
No, Terry Moore won't be back for a couple more weeks. I mean, that unfortunately tore his ACL on an interception that he had against Ole Miss.
I remember it. Yep.
He won't be back until probably at least week 7, if I had to guess. Like, I would be shocked if October is probably the time frame realistically. But his replacement, Deshaun Stone, very good tackler, but he's not great in coverage. Like, I think he had 9 tackles against Tulane on PFF, if I'm not mistaken, and 0 missed tackles, which is great. But I think they had 3 catches for 85 yards against him. He just is more of like a linebacker at that position, like a striker almost. And then Weaver's a transfer from Sam Houston State, and Caleb Weaver is solid. He's a good tackler, and he's athletic, kind of like Terry Moore, to where he's a range safety where he can go sideline to sideline when the ball's in the air. It's just it hasn't been great in the back end because of the inexperience by the DBs and Deshaun Stone stepping in for Terry Moore.
You mentioned the struggles in the special teams. Todd Polino's a name I recognize, right? He's been around a while. And so he's had his issues. NC State dealt with it this year. They opened the year starting a new kicker. Their returning kicker, Kanoa Vonset, lost a job apparently in fall camp. Well, he's already back in the mix. What are there other issues outside of Polino? What all's going on in special teams?
Oh, James, when I say special teams, brother, I mean special teams. Let's go. Okay. We were 2 for 5 field goals against Tulane. One was a missed kick by Todd because it was back-to-back false starts by the offensive line, so they iced their own kicker to start the game. Missed it. One was a bad hold, so we didn't even get a kickoff, and then the third got blocked because the right side of the line did not move, and Tulane blocked it. And then when Polino did make a kick, he kicked the kickoff out of bounds. Chandler Rivers dropped the punter, and Casey Brown has fumbled 2 punt returns. One he recovered, one he lost, and then we ran into a punter against Elon. So, you take all those out, special teams is okay. But when I say the special teams unit has been bad, I mean collectively it has been a train wreck.
I'm laughing, man, because, that sounds like Chuck Amato. Right. And I think Manny's so much like Chuck, he puts such an emphasis on special teams. Like, they're aggressive. And that's what I want the listeners to take away from this is you're mentioning the running into the kicker, running into the punter. Like, they are going to try and get a block punt this weekend. You and I both know that they're going to play. They place an emphasis on that under Manny. And yes, sometimes, you may run into the kicker. You're going to get a roughing, and it's not great when you do. But a block punt that you can scoop and return for a touchdown, the percentages on those, when those happen and how often you win football games, that percentage is high. Anytime you get a special teams touchdown, it's high. So that's something I think NC State needs to be on alert for, is it hasn't been great so far, but the mentality, the aggression is there with Manny over there leading the way. So, Jordan, before we get going, I always do this. Well, I actually have one more before I let you give your prediction. Similar question I asked you on the offensive side. Duke's defense, what do you think concerns them in this matchup with NC State?
The run game. Having C.J. Bailey being a guy that the last 2 weeks, Duke's lost to a QB that beat him through the air, and Luke Altmaier, and beat him on the ground, Jake Retzlaff. And C.J. Bailey's been very good at both. So if Duke takes away one aspect, I'm not comfortable. I'm not confident in Duke taking away both aspects as we record right now. But him being a dual threat QB is what's going to keep me up at night, at least, about him just dominating Duke. And then, oh, by the way, if you do stop both of those things with C.J. Bailey, here's Hollywood Smothers, who's leading the ACC in rushing yards. So that is the scary part for me as a Duke fan.
Duke's won the last 2 matchups in 23 over in Durham. Oh, my God, that one was not good. I was actually in the stands for that one, Jordan. It was not – who was it? Is it Beelan?
Yeah, Henry
Beelan, first career start versus MJ Morris. Oh, man. Hopefully this year the quarterback – no offense to Mr. Beelan. Hopefully this year the quarterback play – well, we both expected to be a lot better in this matchup over there, right?
Oh, my God, yeah. I mean, MJ Morris, you talk about a guy that made a bad decision. Goes to Carolina. Good Lord.
So, NC State's going over there. They lost last year as well. So Duke's won 2 straight in this series. We're going to do our official prediction. I've already talked about it all week. I'm picking Duke to win this game. I don't like the spot for NC State. I think Duke, after back-to-back losses, I think they're better than back-to-back losses. They're due a win playing at home. I think Duke finds a way to win it. But, Jordan, I'm going to let you give your prediction, NC State versus Duke. What you thinking?
Yeah, I say all this stuff about how C.J. Bailey scares the hell out of me, and I'm still picking Duke because kind of like what you said, it's a weird spot. Like NC State's 10-0. and Duke's 1-2, and Duke is coming home, even though I think it will be 60-40 red to blue in the stands. But I think they've learned some type of valuable lesson in these two losses. And though I don't trust the special teams, I think this is the game where Duke maybe forces that turnover to give the offense a short field. Like I said, the offense has been great moving the ball. Maybe this is the game where Duke watches the UVA film and it's like, oh, we like what we saw with UVA's offense against NC State's defense, and maybe they can finally settle for three. They punch it in when they get in the red zone. So I do have Duke also, but I'm not loving my pick because I just know what this defense has done the last 2 weeks.
All right, Jordan, before I let you go, tell everyone where they can check you out on social media, on your other platforms.
Yeah, so J-Man's Takes is on Twitter. Big J, Little J Show is my podcast. And then I work with Sleepers Media this college basketball season. I just put out a couple weeks ago on Sleepers Media of top 25 portal class. I have NC State ranked 7th, so I did a video on NC State because I am high on Will Wade in that class. He got defensive guys, so check that out, NC State fans, because you will enjoy what you have to hear about NC State basketball.
Oh, we're going to have Jordan back on for basketball. Trust me, I follow his work, man. He works hard covering the Duke Blue Devils, traveling, doing it all. So, Jordan, man, I appreciate you joining us here today. And like he said, make sure you check out all his stuff. And if you haven't done so here, subscribe at Inside Pack Sports on YouTube. Also, check out the website, www.insidepacksports.com, for the latest coverage of NC State athletics.